You all know that I perform simulations of crap strategies, and sometimes I get to work on really cool projects. One of them was running simulations for a strategy called the Dead Man's Hedge. And my client Kevin used the data in his book on how to play craps for 10 or more hours on a short buy in. You can find the book on Amazon.com. And if you want more insights into a strategy that you use on the craps table, just head over to dicedata.info/services to place an order. Here's the video of a conversation that I had with Kevin last week. Enjoy. So, hi there. This is Matt from Dice Data, and I'm here with Kevin Bonnet, who just wrote a book called The Dead Man's Hedge. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for being on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about your book and the strategy?
Yeah, the strategy is kind of based on this thing I call the dead man's hedge. When you put yourself into a dead man's hedge, you're in a point where you can't lose any money from that point going forward, and you also have a chance to win. What that does is lower the variance quite a bit against conventional strategies.
Fantastic. So, what do you use this strategy for? So, it seems like it's a strategy that lets you stay at the table for a very long time, right?
Yeah. It's like me personally, I'm kind of an advantage gambler. So when I'm playing craps, I'm like a little nervous because like I know I can't actually win in the long term. So like I'm more there playing to enjoy the game and like last. And the higher table minimums nowadays kind of bothered me a little bit. It got me to stop playing craps. So I developed the strategy as a way to basically play craps for a very long time on a small buy-in at the higher buy-in levels.
Can you give us a preview of, what the strategy entails and how it works?
The way the strategy works is you start out with either like a don't pass or a don't come bet. And once that bet moves to a number, if you hedge that number with a place bet, so it's basically like placing the point from the don't pass, it basically hedges that bet away, but the extra odds on the place bet make it so you can win money when you do that.
Mm.
So you basically break even, if the don't pass loses, but you'll win if the points hit. And then you can choose which numbers you want to do that on. So the light strategy just does that on the 6 and 8. That's the least expensive strategy because place betting the 6 and 8 is very inexpensive. Then the optimal strategy also does the 5 and 9, but a heavy strategy that does them all. And the heavy strategy actually also outlasts the previously known longest strategies.
And so it seems like in your book you're describing all these different options. So anybody who buys your book is able to kind of pick and choose their level of their level of risk or their desire to cover all these numbers.
Yeah. So as you add more hedges, the strategies start to last longer, and they also prevent even better a short bust. So like if you look at like how far do 95% of the sessions go, there's a huge improvement for like numbers like that in these strategies. But eventually, if you hedge everything, it starts to lower the median rolls versus like the optimal strategy. So there's a price to be paid. But then kind of what I did once you have that baseline, I actually cover 12, actually more than a dozen new strategies, variations of this that actually provide action players like more action at reduced bankroll requirement.
There's a little bit of a story about how you came up with the strategy, and maybe you could tell us that story and what it's like to actually play this in the casino.
Yeah, so I kind of, I used to play a lot of very low 25-cent dollar style craps live, and that's what I really like to do. And then those went away, so I kind of stopped playing. But then I found a quarter stadium craps bubble machine, at Boulder Station, and it was incredible because it's like penny odds. It's actually better than the quarter table games I used to play. So I would play that, started experimenting a little bit, but they pulled that one, so it went up to a dollar table. I started playing at New Orleans or Orleans, but now it's starting to ratchet up, and my strategy was like continuous pass line come bets with odds, so they could get a little high at a dollar. Maybe that's not high for most people, but I started thinking like, okay, what else can I do? And then I got this weird idea that it could be rigged because like if you play these machines, you'll see the dice balancing on edge at times for like a long amount of time, and you're like, is there any finesse happening? So just to test a theory that it could be rigged, I switched to the dark side for the first time. I've always been a light side player. So I started playing, don't pass, don't come, max odds with the idea that if it's rigged against the player, I'll see it in my results. And the funny thing is, I did see it in my results. It's like I haven't really
Really?
lost playing that way. Um, but anyway, as I started doing that, further experimentation led me to looking at the hit frequency of the numbers, and like basically, should I make adjustments like if the 5 is getting hit a lot or the 4 is never being hit. So I started just for fun doing that, and that's what led me to the Dead Man's Hedge. I ended up after seeing a 5 got hit a lot, my don't come bet moved to the 5. I did a dollar place bet on the machine just as a joke, like look at this, I just I don't have to lose money now when that 5 hits again because I know it will. And it was kind of silly. And I was playing with my friend, and we were like talking about it. I'm like, yeah, it's like the Dead Man's Hedge, because like if you die at the table, you'll still have money left. It was just kind of a joke. And then I started calling like I just DMH to him, just to be funny. Never intended to actually bring it to a live table. I thought it'd be kind of silly, get laughed at for doing it. But then I ended up wanting to go on a cruise and try to play it a long time at a $10 table. And I thought about bankroll extension strategies and realized, this could be the trick to make your roll last as long as possible.
How did you find me, and what kind of brought you to working with dice data?
Yeah, when I figured out the strategy I was going to use on the cruise, I was just taking it to some craps table simulators and trying to try it out there. I realized I'd never really know how great it worked, but at least I had some experience using it. Took that to the cruise, played for about 10 hours at a $10 table, ended up winning $150. I was running
Nice.
pretty hot, but I didn't lose. It worked kind of as advertised. I could tell right away, like this is going to park you at the table forever. And I got 500 points, so that was kind of a goal.
There you
They
go.
haven't given me a free cruise yet, but I might get free drinks someday. So then when I got back from the cruise, I'm like, hey, I think I'm onto something, but how do I know? So that's when I started looking at people who simulate, found you. And I wasn't sure that, the 6859 hedge was optimal. That's what I was playing. So I wanted to try different variations. So I also tried the 6 and 8 only, hedging all of them. And then after I got the results back from there, it was like the median was 601 for the 6-8. It was 607 for the.
Let me, since we're getting into the data now, let me pull it up and so that we can look at the actual
Yeah.
data as you're going through this. All right, you want to tell us what we're looking at right here?
Yeah, so these are the simulation results for the different strategies that I tried. So the benchmark was don't pass, no odds. That's the
Mhm.
lowest cost possible strategy you can play on a cost per roll basis.
So that median number of rolls, that 50% of the sessions lasted 488 rolls or more.
Yeah, so let me just explain because we had to tweak
Sure.
your normal simulation. So his normal simulation was a 10 shooters times 100,000, right? So it's
Yep, 100,000 bots running for 10 shooters, which is
yeah.
usually about 8.5 million rolls.
Yeah. So what I needed to do to get to the median, we had to go long enough to get to whatever the median was. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
so. And when I saw the initial result you showed me, it looked like it could go maybe 1,000 rolls. So like I was like, we're gonna have to go. Let's go 300 shooters, which was probably more than we needed to actually do, right? But I didn't know. I wanted to go enough
Yeah.
that we would bust out more than half the people was the idea, right? So we're going to start everybody with 10 times the minimum on the craps table. In the simulations, that was a $150 buy-in on a $15 craps table. And we're going to just let that run for 300 shooters or until they bust. And by letting it run until they bust and going past the median, we could determine the median. We don't need to go any further. So the median for the benchmark, like I described earlier, which is the don't pass, no odds continuous, is 488. And then I found 3 that would go over 600. Now, 600 rolls at a 60 roll per hour table, like a full table, that's 10 hours of play. It's
Yeah.
pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And the optimal goes 25% longer than the benchmark, which is also pretty huge. So
Just note these were some of the longest simulations that I've ever run. 10 shooters at 100,000 bots is usually 8.5 million rolls. This is like 98 million, 95 million. So you have some really big data here.
Yeah, I think it was pretty cool, and it was cool to look at them against each other, and then also look at the role distribution graphs against each other and see how these hedging strategies affected the role distribution graphs by kind of like flattening out the initial peak, because every strategy is going to have a pretty fast peak where people are busting out, unless you have like an infinite bankroll. So
Yeah.
these strategies are able to flatten that out and get people passed on the other side of that peak. And that's how they work.
Is there anything that really surprised you about the simulation that you learned from the simulation report?
I just think there's really a lot to learn, but I think the biggest surprise was that 1.387 house edge on the light strategy. I
Yeah,
didn't
right.
think
Yeah.
it was possible to come up with a complete strategy that was lower house edge than a pass line bet. It does put more money in action than a minimum pass line bet, so it does cost a little bit more than a pass line bet as a complete strategy, but like it's really barely more. And then what you can do to a strategy like this, we haven't really talked about more action versions, but you're basically either dead man's hedging a 6 or 8 on the light strategy, or you're just going to let it play out with no odds. If you go ahead and lay the odds, it doesn't cost anything
Mm.
more. And that all of a sudden becomes like a very like valuable strategy with a lot of action. And then to take it a step further, like if you look at the 3 point Molly and the 3 point Dolly, which are some of the lowest cost complete strategies, if you play them like the light strategy, which I call the 3 point folly in the book. If you play them that way, it requires a lot lower bankroll, or you'll last like a lot longer on the same bankroll. So the problems with the Dolly and Molly is like it requires quite a bankroll to play them, and if
They
you
get
play them
expensive.
light,
That's actually one of the things that got me into simulation is because I started off my first time playing craps. I'm like, I'm gonna play that low house edge and I'm gonna play the 3 point Molly, and I lost quite a bit. And I was like, wait, what's the most that I could lose? What could really happen? What are these kind of tendencies? And that's what got me to simulating, and that's where I really learned about, bankroll and everything else that comes with it is not necessarily the same as the house edge.
yeah, yeah. So another thing that we haven't talked about it yet, but another thing I get into in the book is kind of the concept of hourly rate. Forget about the house edge. It's interesting, and like you can get it pretty low, by placing a ton of odds, but like what is the cost per roll of a strategy? And then these are very low cost strategies. In the book, I kind of cover what all the different bets are as far as cost per roll and hourly rates, and what the different base strategies you see.
If somebody wanted to play these strategies, how much money would you say they should buy in for?
It's 10x the minimum bet. So at a
Okay.
$100 at a $10 minimum bet, you buy in for $100. But these are more, no, you're going to buy in for a small amount of money and it's small risk and play. And as long as you have the patience to play that way, I do, but not everyone is. But what I do find in playing these strategies, they're dark side strategies, and they tend to win in the short term. Even though you're hedging a lot of stuff, there is money in action quite a bit, and like you can win money, and in the short term, they tend to win.
So we see that in a lot of my simulations is that, any dark side strategy, you're probably going to win more often than you lose, but when
Yeah.
you do lose, it kind of hurts pretty, it can hurt. So you might need to, be ready to walk away from the table if you need to.
Yeah, and I think what's happened to me live. I have this strategy variation that I call "I'm the best shooter at the table" strategy. Like a lot of people think this way. So like I'll be playing this strategy, until it gets to my shooter, until it's my roll, and I usually play it from the don't come because it's just less disruptive. People don't even notice it when you play it that way. So I play it from the don't come, but now it's my shot, and like I don't really want to roll from the don't pass. So I'm like, okay, give me the dice. I'll roll from the pass line for this roll.
Mhm.
And what tends to happen is that's when I tend to start hammering the sevens and elevens. It's
Yeah.
just like I just got myself out of just getting crushed, because that's
Yeah.
what'll kill these strategies. If you get repeated sevens and elevens over and over again, that's the that's where you're exposed. And
Yeah.
for some reason, when that's happened, like I've been the roller, or I play it from the don't come, and the roller's doing it on the come out, and I'm like off. So, so I get that
Mhm.
must have been why. But like I've been winning playing these strategies. I know you can't long term, but it feels like a very like a small amount. Like you're not going to win a huge
Yeah.
amount playing this way. You're
Yeah.
gonna buy in for 100 and cash out for 130. A lot of the times. And
Yeah, and
these
it's very clear, where this strategy fits in your, overall portfolio of strategies. This is a time at the table strategy, right?
yeah, exactly.
Somebody, one of our viewers wants to learn more. Where do they go and pick up your book?
Oh yeah, so the book's available on Amazon right now. It's on Kindle and paperback. And then like I said, there's lots of variations for to up the action. So like even if you're not interested in or have the patience for a strategy like this, there's variations to take your existing strategy and make it last longer.
Great. Well, Kevin, it was great talking to you, and it was a lot of fun working on this project and running all these simulations. And I really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thanks so much for your help.